So our next presentation will be Zach Voyles. Zach has been the South Region Private Land Supervisor with IDNR-Division of Fish and Wildlife since 2020. Prior to that, he was a district wildlife biologist in Southeast Indiana and a farm bill biologist with Pheasants Forever. He is the current president of the Indiana chapter of the Wildlife Society. Zach works out of Crosley Fish and Wildlife area in Jennings County and lives in Seymour. He's a native Hoosier who grew up on a corn, soybean, and cattle farm in Morgan County. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Zach, and you can take it away.
All right, can you hear me and see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. It's always a crapshoot. Thanks for that introduction. So I'll just get started here and let you know a little bit about our cost share and Gamebird programs. Those are two programs that basically came out of the blizzard of '78. That was a major snowstorm in January, I believe, '78. And in response to that major event, the Division of Fish and Wildlife and the Indiana General Assembly decided to act and do something for wildlife. So two programs came out of that because of the major losses to small game populations, especially northern bobwhite from that blizzard. However, these programs were nearly overshadowed by many other great achievements in that year. So some hints here with some different things that also happened that year. I don't know if anyone has any guesses as to maybe what year these programs would have started. Many clues there. Several of us maybe weren't even alive then, but some of us were. But that year was 1980. So in 1980, the General Assembly and the Division of Fish and Wildlife decided to come out with two different programs. One of those programs came out of the Assembly, and that was the Gamebird Habitat Stamp program. That's actually an Indiana code. So that legislation, I believe, came out in '79. The first stamp was issued in 1980. The Division of Fish and Wildlife decided to come out with the Save Our Small Game program. And that money, well, I'll get into the money here. Okay, so that money is basically dedicated Division of Fish and Wildlife funds. That money comes from license funds primarily. So 19 license monies is used for that program. The Indiana code that the Assembly passed basically created the Gamebird stamp. So that's an additional stamp that anyone who hunts a Gamebird species has to purchase. And a portion of those funds are used for habitat restoration monies, and we still have that today. We don't actually have a physical stamp anymore, but the fund still exists, and you still have to purchase that stamp. So Gamebirds essentially are pheasant, the bobwhite quail, ruffed grouse, which we don't have a season for anymore, mourning dove, and wild turkey. So to be able to use those funds for habitat restoration on properties, can be anywhere in the state, but it has to be for one of those species. The legislature also, I believe around 2014, set a cap on the per acre amount that we can issue to anyone for those funds to be used on their property, and that's $330 an acre per year. There is no cap on the cost share per acre rate. So here's the breakdown, a lot of numbers here. This is basically our annual allotment. We basically have around $50,000 a year that we can spend on cost share. About half of that, around half of that, we decided to dedicate to our new RCPP, grasslands for game birds and songbirds. It's actually not new. It started about 2018, but the second phase of that program began end of last year, and then I believe this fall we'll be taking applications for the new phase of that, and that'll be through NRCS. Nate Gaze will talk about that, I think, last Monday. But this is separate from that. These are actual cost share monies and Gamebird monies that we decided as a division to set aside specifically to help fund that program. So the remaining half of those monies, around 25,000 in cost share, is available for everyone else. The Gamebird portion is about 100,000 annually. And we divided that up as well. Some of it went to RCPP, and then the rest of it is available to everyone else. Then a couple of subsets of those two programs. Up north, we've got the Wetlands Partnership Program, which is an additional $8,000 a year. And that's really primarily for the northeast, north central portions of Indiana, areas where that are rich in natural wetlands. Those monies are specifically for partnerships with other organizations or other agencies to do wetland restoration, wetland establishment work. So that could be U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, it could be Ducks Unlimited, it could even be a soil and water district. And then a subset of the Gamebird funds, an additional 30,000. So that's in addition to that 100,000. And that's for partnerships for Gamebird habitat. And again, those funds are to be used in partnership. So ideally, that would be a partnership with another organization or agencies, and that could be Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, or Soil and Water District, something along those lines. And I'll just say that I do have some links in here at the bottom of some of my slides. I'll share a PDF with my presentation in the chat here when I get done, and you all can click on those links and explore more on our website. So I mentioned briefly the Grasslands for Gamebirds and Songbirds program. This is just a map of the second iteration of that program. Those counties in green are where the GGS program is currently working, and there's a link there to that if you want to learn more about that program specifically, or you could go back and watch Nate Gazel's presentation from, I think it was last day, might have been 2 days ago, I can't remember. Here's just a brief overview of some of our accomplishments from last fiscal year, and some of the types of work that we did. We did some wetland restoration work, some grassland work, pollinators. One thing that we do, or that we like to do on a lot of the areas that we work, is management. So we'll help cost share prescribed burning, we'll help do disking, any kind of early successional habitat management. So that would be basically looking for annual weeds, annual succession, that kind of thing, setback succession, woody encroachment. So we had about 48 agreements last year on 472 acres, and we spent around $63,000. If you're keeping track of the money available versus what we spent, we didn't come close to spending what we have available. So I think there's a message there for all of you all on here. We do have more funding available. Primarily, our district and our grassland biologists run point on our programs. And not always is our cost share or our Gamebird funds really the best option. So sometimes a farm bill program, be it CRP or PrEP or EQIP, or even maybe the RCPP, one of the RCPPs in the state, you've got a couple of them, few actually. But sometimes those are more lucrative for landowners. So our biologists will steer the landowner in that direction instead. But the money is there when the situation is right. So I would just encourage anyone on here or any landowner looking for assistance to reach out to a district biologist or a grassland biologist, and they can point landowner in the right direction. And then Patrick, my counterpart in the north, he's the North Region Supervisor. He helped me actually put this presentation together. But the two of us kind of run point on keeping track of how much funding is available. And then we also work with our landowners to navigate the state vendor system, which is not fun. So I've talked a lot about, well, I've thrown a lot of numbers at you and thrown a lot of jargon out. So I figured that it would be nice to see some actual pictures. So this first one here, this was down in Owen County. And this is about a 2.5 acre forest opening that we worked on. We helped cost share on this. So this picture here is showing the before. So the site has been prepped and is ready for seeding. And then this is after. This is the first growing season. So you can see a lot more green. So it may look scary at first, but that vegetation comes on pretty quick. Let's see. This next one here, this is in Greene County. And this particular site, we used Gamebird funds, and that was because it was primarily targeted at northern bobwhite and wild turkey. So this is December after the first growing season. So you can see some broom sedge out there, a lot of foxtail, and some of those warm season grasses will take another year or two before they really come on. This is in Dearborn County. This is second growing season. So typically that first growing season, we usually tell landowners to not even go out and really look too much at their grassland or pollinator habitat, because it's going to be, to the untrained eye, it's going to be just full of weeds. But by the second year, you really start to see some of those wildflowers and native warm season grasses come on. And this site here, you can see is close to a right of way. You see that big tower in the back. Those are great locations for us to do habitat work. As I mentioned, we also like to fund management on our habitat properties, not just establishment. As many of you know, once you plant it, you can't just walk away if you want to maintain it for game birds and pollinators and early successional species. So this is just a couple of photos showing some prescribed burning that landowners have done. In the photo on the left, you can see some red cedar. Fireworks wonders on getting rid of red cedar. Photo on the right shows a very well made fire break. So we like to see bare mineral soil when fire breaks. This is an aerial view of a prescribed burn. And you can see here kind of it didn't all burn. And that's not a bad thing. A lot of times prescribed fire does burn some areas where the fuel is good and where there isn't so much fuel, or where it's wet, it doesn't burn, but that's fine. That creates kind of a mosaic. These are just some photos of some activities that these photos actually come from our habitat team, but these are the kind of things that our landowners would do either themselves or through a third-party contractor to do some of this work. But autumn olive removal in a grassland, early successional strip disking, probably followed in this case by some grain plots, sorghum most likely. And then on the right, that's looks to be just a field of fescue that's about to be sprayed in the fall in preparation for seeding. And then I spoke just a few moments ago about kind of a mosaic. That's what we like to see, kind of the going back in time, back to the 40s and 50s, back when farming wasn't like it is today. So we like to see kind of a mosaic of early successional habitat, some grain food plots, some nesting cover for songbirds and some of our upland game birds. So this is a photo of a location where we've done some cost share work, and this is a summer photo here. And then this is a really nice photo. This is backdrop more than on your laptop, but this is a fall picture of that same location. And then this next picture here, it's actually a video. So this is in Pike County. and we worked on this site for the first time about 6 years ago. Since then, we've done some early succession management on this location or helped pay the landowner to do some of the work, which has included disking, spraying, and some food plots. So it might be hard to hear, but this is early morning, not that long ago, maybe a month ago on this property. So you might want to turn your volume up just for a minute. If not, I'll share this video and you can listen to it on your own time. So I don't know how good you guys could hear all of this, but there were several birds singing. It was actually pretty loud if you turned the volume up, but there were several birds singing. This is just a sampling of some of the birds that were singing. I test some of your ID skills here. So yellow-breasted chat, field sparrow, common yellowthroat, Carolina wren, yellow warbler, and indigo bunting. Two of those species actually we monitor for on some of our sites, and because they're indicators, so we listen to field sparrows and indigo bunting, so among some others. These three species here weren't, you couldn't hear them in this video, but they have been noted on this property before. Those are northern bobwhite, Winslow sparrow, and discs. So we don't just do it all for upland birds or game birds. A lot of what we do impacts pollinating species as well, pollinators. So this particular set of photos, it's showing one species for the most part, but one of the pictures is a lookalike. So again, test maybe your ID skills here. I don't know if you can tell which of these is the imposter. It's actually this one here. It's a monarch lookalike. It's a viceroy. So those wing bars there on the lower part there, I just circle those in green. Those are indicators that it is not a monarch. It's a lookalike. Some other butterflies and one moth that we commonly see on some of our restoration establishments. So pipe vine swallowtail, tiger swallowtail, clouded sulfurs, and then the so with that, I'll wrap things up and take questions. I would encourage anyone who is interested in cost share or maybe works or is working with a landowner who might be interested in cost share to reach out to one of our wildlife biologists. We've got 8 district biologists, 1 urban, and 2 grassland biologists. And that link there will take you to all of them. And then, of course, if you have any specific questions about the programs that I talked about, whether it be cost share or Gamebird funds or RCPP or any of that kind of thing, feel free to reach out to either myself in the south or Patrick in the north. And I think that pretty much does it. So I will take questions if we have any.
Yeah, any questions for Zach? Feel free to type them in the chat box or unmute yourself. There is one question there already, Zach, asking if GGSI does the actual work of restoration.
So that's a very good question. So our Grasslands for Game Birds and Songbirds program, through that program, we have habitat teams, and they do some habitat work. However, they are stretched very thin. So most of the work that they do is limited to our access properties, which I didn't talk about today. I think Jason Wade maybe talked about that in another presentation. But our access program helps pay for hunting access for game species. So our habitat teams spend most of their time managing those properties. So in short, really the answer is no. For most of our cost share game bird and GGS cost share work. It's going to have to be done by the landowner or through a third party, which there are contractors out there who will do all of the work that I showed you. They will do that, of course, for a fee. But one of the good things about our cost share and Gamebird program is we issue the payment directly to the landowner, and then what they do with that money, whether it's pay contractor or reimburse themselves for time, labor, material, whatever, that's up to them. So. And then I see another question here. Do we have a list of contractors? Yes, it's a bit dated, and it's something that we've actually identified as a need to work on that. And I think we're actually maybe working with some external partners to update that list. However, we do have a list. I would recommend, if you are looking for local contractors, that you reach out to your local district biologist. They're going to be the one most in tune with the area. And if you follow that link here in a minute, I post on my presentation, you can find contact information for your district biologist.